BBC News.
Good morning, this is BBC Radio 4. First, here is Libby Purvis and guests with Midweek.
In the outer world, it is budget day, and what could be more sternly appropriate than a reminder of why tax is actually rather a good thing, which holds countries together all over the world. Kieran Holmes is an Irishman, but an internationally experienced expert in gathering revenue and ending corruption. At the moment, he is Commissioner General of the Office Burundais de Recettes, reforming the Burundian tax system. One of the poorest countries in the world, this. 12-year civil war, Hutu and Tutsi, tribal conflict, political assassination of the premier at one point,
Correct.
And now this power-sharing government and UN intervention. It sounds a nightmare job to go in and try and sort out the tax affairs.
Yes, well, I would say it's probably been the most difficult job I've done to date. And of course, what's unique about the job that I do now is that I'm actually in position, I'm in line position, I run the tax system. I'm the only expatriate working at that level in the government, and we've had enormous success while I've been there. I've been there 3 years almost, and we've doubled tax revenues in that 3-year period. So
we'll talk about how in a minute, but we just should fill in some of the other places you've worked. You've worked in Yemen.
Yemen, yes.
The Kiribati Islands in the Pacific, where they say you increased the revenue fourfold.
That's correct,
What were they doing before?
Well,
were they just all putting it under the mattress and refusing to give it to the government?
Well, I'll tell you, it's actually pronounced Kiribati because they only have 13 letters in their alphabet, so TI stands for S.
Kiribati.
So it's Kiribati. And if you think about it, it sounds like Gilbert's, Kiribati, and that's what it is. It's the Gilbert Islands.
It's the Gilbert Islands?
Yes.
Yeah. Stamps of that.
Yeah, everybody has stamps from there, yes. I went there in 1984, and they were just 5 years old. They just had their independence from the UK in 1979. And the job was to help build their tax system, which I did over a 6-year period, and we did lots of interesting things like write a new tax law and differentiate the taxpayers as is standard practice. So you have large, medium, and small taxpayers, and you have different strategies for each. And by using a small amount of computer systems and so on, we managed to increase the revenue by 400% over time, and it was a sustainable increase.
And you've worked in Africa before as well, because in Lesotho you got kidnapped, didn't you?
Yeah, I came after Kiribati, went to Lesotho, and I'd been there 6 months when one Tuesday afternoon I was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I just kissed my daughter goodbye and walking out, and 4 guys with guns jumped me and pushed me into my car. I threw the keys to them because I was sure they were after the car, but they said, no, you're coming as well. And they pushed me on the floor and put a gun to my head. And that was the beginning of a rather bad Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, and you even worse, because you say they kept playing your Bob Geldof records.
That's right. I was a big fan of the Boomtown Rats. And they were very casual. These guys, they were very professional. They'd obviously done it many times before. So they were just driving along, playing my music. And as I was saying to you earlier, I met Geldof many years later, and I said to him, the last thing I thought I'd hear was your voice, because I was sure they were going to end my life there.
Did they just let you go then? Or?
No, you see, what happened was my maid was coming back from her long weekend, and she had seen the whole thing, and she had a good sense not to call the police. She called the Commissioner of Taxes, whom she knew from coming to the house, and he called the British High Commissioner. There was a British Army training team. They had a helicopter up. So they basically closed down the capital city, Nasiru, with roadblocks and the like. Fortunately for me, I think, the vehicle actually got through the roadblock, because otherwise I would have been in the middle of a shootout. So anyway, we got into the mountains, and the first thing, they put a gun to my head and said, run. And I didn't stop running until I put a hill between them and me. But there I was, standing in a field, wearing a suit, carrying books, and a Basotho man was cutting his maize, and he wouldn't even look at me.
You kept your tax records with you.
Well, it was rather stupid. I was carrying some books, and they gave me the books and then said run. So I took the books and ran.
George Osborne,
yeah.
That's incredible. You didn't drop the books.
I didn't drop the books.
I'm really impressed.
No,
this is revenue men don't. But coming to Burundi, so let's use what's been happening in Burundi as an example. Obviously, you move into a country that's had a civil war, that's had a lot of unrest and strife. You're going to have a mass of corruption.
Yes,
in
corruption.
The system, aren't you?
Corruption was traditionally a problem there, and we always fight corruption.
What did you do first then? What's your first job?
First job was to recruit new staff for the Revenue Administration, and we did a recruitment of 425 staff it was the biggest recruitment that Burundi had ever seen, because we had 9,000 applications for the 400 jobs. And that meant, sifting those down to about the top 2,500.
And did they have to do an exam,
Yeah,
or were
we gave
there
them an
things
exam.
saying, my brother-in-law, you better have my brother-in-law?
No. It was all done openly and transparently and correctly. We gave 2,500 an exam, and then we marked the exams in the security of the basement of my house. And we then interviewed the top 700, and we gave jobs to the best of those, which was 425.
And once you get them working, how do you prevent corruption and neighbourliness creeping in again?
The first thing I did, which was contrary to Nikki's advice, was I knocked down all the walls inside.
Oh, none of these small rooms with just two people doing a deal.
Purely open plan offices with glass windows. Everything was transparent. And then we trained them. We paid them a lot more than they'd been getting under the old administration. We made them sign a code of conduct, and we made them declare their assets. So we got a very good, transparent organisation. I would say it's the best organisation in Burundi now in terms of operations.
We should say that the World Bank lately ranked Burundi the 5th most improved business reformer in its Doing Business report. And you must look around you and get a sense of the value of this, because if you have an honest tax and customs system, then governments can do something.
That's right.
For the common good.
Governments are empowered. And they're empowered. They get more money, and they can use that on infrastructure. They can then create a better business environment.
What's Burundi done with the money that's raised?
Well, just one of the examples. You can now form a business inside 1 hour in Burundi. That's, forming the business and getting your tax number all inside 1 hour, which makes it much easier for companies to come in, start up a business, and know that they're dealing with a transparent system.
And they've built the first hospital, I think.
They built a hospital, and they built a dam, or building a dam. And but the main thing is that the government is empowered to just pay the public service, because, they can't. His Excellency the President said that before the OBR, they were having to borrow this to pay public service salaries, and now they have enough financial strength to do that. That may not sound like a lot, but it's a beginning.
But if you clean a place up in any form, you're going to make yourself unpopular. I mean, do you have to be protected all the time now?
Yes, I have bodyguards and the like, and I drive around in an armoured car.
Yeah. And if you were,
it's aesthetically pleasing armoured car.
This is not sort of specifically sort of about Burundi, but if you were to consider a government the recipient of the tax that you are openly and transparently raising to be itself corrupt, what would you do? Would you be able to blow the whistle and walk out?
Yeah, part of my job is to make sure that everything is transparent. And if we see that there are non-transparent activities occurring, I have to, inform the minister, and I have to inform the second vice president and others. And we do that regularly because sometimes mistakes are made. Ministries sign something they shouldn't have signed, and wrong contracts get entered into, and so on.
But if you thought the government itself was wrong, was it on the take? That has been known.
It has been known, and that's why tax reform is only one leg of the stool. You also need public financial management to make sure the Ministry of Finance is properly accounting for everything and spending everything wisely, and you need proper public procurement institutions in place. So you can't just look at the tax; you have to look at the whole thing. And it's very important that donors and financial institutions do look at the whole picture when they do these kind of interventions.
We're fresh out of the Comic Relief big annual fundraise here, and all these fundraising things, good as they are, often leave us with a sense of Africa as eternally in need of aid, always at the point of desperation, just needing us to send money. What are your feelings about Africa and the future of Africa? Are you an optimist?
I think the future of Africa, I'm hugely optimistic. I think Africa is where the growth will be in the next 10 years. I think the job should be not just the comic relief, but it should be to build the effective institutions to allow people to fish for themselves rather than to give them a fish. And that means creating the institutions, making the institutions work, helping those governments to help themselves. And it's far better, if I just mentioned to you about Burundi, where the increase in revenue that we have done is far greater than the volume of aid they would have received in the same period. So in fact, they're better off by collecting their own revenues and by building their own institutions. It's a win-win situation.
How did you get so tough?
I don't know.
Did you grow up tough?
I was always a bit ornery when I was young, so...